I imagine you know that yesterday was St. Patrick's Day. Yeah. Any St. Patrick's fans here? Anybody Irish? I got some Irish. Yeah. Now, I hope that none of you were drinking green beer yesterday, given that we're a safe place for recovery here. But that's one of the things people like to do on St. Patrick's Day, or a silly little thing, is to wear green so you don't get pinched, right? Or people like to have corned beef and cabbage. Anybody have corned beef and cabbage yesterday? Few people, okay. Few people celebrating. Well, I'm quite sure that St. Patrick would be a little sad if we didn't think about what his life was really about. You know, and there's some people that are celebrating St. Patrick's today, even after the day, this weekend. This is a kind of a party weekend for a lot of people. And the sad thing is that St. Patrick wasn't, he's about joy, but he wasn't about getting drunk. He wasn't about green beer. He was about Christ. He was about living for God. He was about helping hurting people. I don't know if you've ever heard this story of St. Patrick. It's a very interesting story. He was born in 385, so a long time ago, 385, okay? So we're talking like over 1,600 years ago. And he was born to Roman parents in Scotland. And when he was just a boy of 14 years old, some droids from Ireland, who was a really tough, rowdy, like gang mobster type guys, came and captured Patrick, 14 years old as a boy, and they enslaved him. They took him over to Ireland, and they mistreated him. They took him up high into the mountains, and they forced him to be a shepherd over the sheep. And they abused him and mistreated him. They exposed him to freezing cold, rain and snow, and he practically died. Well, after 6 years of this, 6 years putting up with all this, God gave him a dream in the night. It was the first of 2 dreams that changed his life. I don't know if you've ever had a dream that helped you make that turning of the will that changed your life. Well, St. Patrick had a dream like that. He dreamed that he found an escape. And so he began to think and pray about how he could escape. And sure enough, he was able to get away and onto a ship and get back to his home country of Scotland and get free of those droids and all that abuse and the slavery that he endured. Well, he went and studied to become a priest, to be a pastor, to help people know God's love and so forth. Then he had another dream. And in this dream, God showed him the people of Ireland crying out to him for help. People in Ireland who were under the oppression of those same droids that had oppressed and abused him and were suffering in other ways. And so he actually went back to the country that had enslaved him to share the love of Christ. He figured, well, if Jesus Christ died on the cross for my sins and forgave me so that I could have the mercy of God and be forgiven, and so that I can be reconciled to God and know that God is loving and have an eternity in heaven. If Jesus died on the cross for me and rose from the dead, and he went through all that suffering for me, I could follow the Lord's call and go back to the people of Ireland who are oppressed and enslaved and suffering and share the good news that God loves them. 40 years he traveled around sharing the gospel of Jesus and being kind and caring for people, helping the poor, helping those who are broken and struggling and hurting in various ways. And he established a number of churches to help people. And the story is very inspiring, and it makes me think, a lot of you are like St. Patrick. You are here because you've struggled with addiction. All of us here have struggled with addiction, or we wouldn't be here. But some of you have come a long ways. You've been coming to these meetings for a long time. I talked to some of you before the meeting. One of the brothers, 3.5 years he's been in recovery, sober. And that's a lot of work. And that's something to be, if this is your first month, seeing you come up in the chip line, I want you to be proud. We all want you to be proud of yourself. That's a big deal. You've turned your will for 30 days to say, no, I'm not going to go back to that crap. It might feel good for a moment, but it's killing my life. It's destroying my relationships. It's making me unproductive in my life and my work. And it's disconnecting me from God's love. And so it's a big deal to walk this life of recovery and sobriety. And so some of you have been on this path a long time, and you've gotten out of the slavery of that, just like St. Patrick got out of his slavery. And now you've come back, and you're a sponsor, right? That was in our trivia quiz. What's a sponsor? Yeah, it's somebody that helps people, helps them in a special way, right? If you're not a sponsor, I hope you have a sponsor, because you just can't get very far in life without a recovery coach, without somebody who listens to you, who prays for you, who has some experience, who has done the step work, you see, who's been through the pain, who's learned how to turn their will and their life over to the care of God. And so that going back to people who are trapped, who are enslaved, that's what St. Patrick did. That's what he was all about. And what I'd really like us to remember St. Patrick for is his prayer. I don't know if you've ever heard of the famous St. Patrick breastplate prayer or his shield prayer. You might not know it by name, but it goes like this: Christ before me, Christ behind me, Christ with me, Christ in me, Christ beneath me, Christ above me, Christ on my right, Christ on my left, Christ on my lips, Christ in everyone that I meet. And his prayer was to be immersed in the presence of the Spirit of Jesus, the Spirit of the one who gave his life for us, the Spirit of grace. I love that prayer because that's how I want to live. I want to live immersed in a sense of God's presence.